Hey everyone, it's Jim
And Charles
from Valves and More, an online vintage tube store. And today in Tube Lab number 235, we're going to talk about a new 6SN7 GTA discovery. A happy day. But first, caution everyone, electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. Well, Charles is always keeping his eye out for interesting inventory that we've forgotten about. And this week, he found something very valuable that's been sitting in our inventory for years. And boy, were we glad to have found them. If you've followed our channel for any length of time, you'll know one of our favorite 6SN7s is the vintage Sylvania 6SN7 GTA, made in the 1950s. Unfortunately, they're now basically extinct, with only singles and bad testing tubes showing up for sale. Long gone are the days when we'd bring in 30 or 40 new old stock examples in one order. Now, what does that have to do with today's tube? After all, it is labeled as a Rogers GT.
There it is right there.
Well, Charles, you're the one that made the discovery, and actually you're the pro on the Rogers tubes. What in the heck's going on with these tubes? Because it looks a lot like a Sylvania tube.
Well, and it basically is. So we've talked a lot before about how Rogers and Sylvania had very close ties. There were issues in the past where Philips, who also had close ties with Sylvania, were trying to import tubes into Canada, and there was a massive lawsuit for it. I believe this was in the mid-30s or so. After that...
That's the 1930s.
Yeah, the 1930s, not the 1830s. That's going a little too far back. Anyway, so after that, what we see happening is that Sylvania started importing plate structures. Just the plate structures, not the completed tubes.
Not even the getters.
Not even the getters into Canada, and then they were having Rogers, who were also affiliated with Philips, assemble them essentially into a finished tube. So what we ended up seeing was that a lot of Sylvania tubes, and here's a excellent example of a GTA angle plate chrome dome right here. We start seeing that there are Rogers equivalents of these tubes showing up in Canada, with very minor differences, but essentially the same internals on them and some other features that are copied. So the GTA angle plates, these would have come out in the early to mid 50s. There was a transitory tube that still had back-to-back straight plates, just like the tall bad boys, but in a shorter bottle. And these came in right afterwards. And the GTAs, of course, are the upgraded version of a 6SN7 GT. They're higher spec, higher wattage, can handle higher plate voltages, and so they're better suited for modern amplifiers.
They also have a little bit more warmth in the mid-range, which is almost certainly second harmonics.
Yeah, they are fantastic sounding tubes. We love all of the Sylvania GTAs that are out there, and we especially love that we can actually play them in modern amps and recommend them for modern amps. So around the 1950s, the early 1950s, we start seeing them import into Canada as well. And these ones are dated for 1955. At least the patent is. We don't know if this is exactly when they were being imported for, so it would have been maybe mid to late 1950s that we start seeing these plate structures show up in Canada. And if you take a look at these very closely, you'll see that the micas are identical. And let me see if I can get that in there. The micas are the same, they have the same spots for support rods, and the bases are identical. They even imported the bases, which is not something that we see on later tubes that were, or later structures that were imported.
Or they actually had the molds from Sylvania. Mm-hmm. And we're not 100% certain about that. But what is a dead giveaway that this is actually a Rogers tube is the getter.
Yeah, so if I get that in focus there. So Rogers used a couple of different getter types. They used these sort of boxed bar getters. I think there's another term for them.
I think it's like a capital D, basically.
Yeah, a D getter. They also used horseshoe getters, and to a lesser extent, I think they used some very small halo getters. Mm-hmm. While Sylvania was known for having these huge flashings on their tubes for the early ones, and these are all from plate or foil getters.
Yeah, which is a holdover from the bad boy era of the 1940s, in which the foil getter would be way down at the base. So you'd actually have the chrome
It would be coming up from the bottom here instead.
Yeah, and the first generation straight plate GTA that Sylvania made had chrome almost all the way down. The whole tube was basically filled with gettering.
I think likely as a result of their mica design actually on the top, because they actually had more of a rectangular mica that allowed the chrome to creep down, while this one has a circular one with very little space, so it looks like it's mostly trapped at the top here.
Now, gettering is basically in place for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to establish a really good vacuum when the tube's first manufactured, and to maintain that vacuum over the lifespan of the tube. As far as we know, it has no effect on the sonics of the tube, though the jury is still out on that, I think, because a lot of the tubes that we like the very best tend to have more gettering on them. So that's a curious question that maybe somebody will jump into the comments and talk about.
Yeah, or it could just be a result of the differences in gettering corresponded to differences in manufacturing times or factories or anything like that.
And that could well be the correlation, because the earlier tube was manufactured, the better they tend to sound. Now, that's a very general rule, but it tends to hold fairly well for tubes like Svetlana's, like Sylvania's, like RCA's. But again, it's a very general rule. Mullard's.
Yeah, so after the foil getters, Sylvania switched over to using halo getters in most of their tubes, and they ended up having sort of a getter flashing very similar to the Rogers one right here, where you could actually see the getter holder, and you do have some flashing, but not nearly as much as they had with the early foil ones.
Now, why does any of this really matter? Well, it's all about the sound.
Yep.
If you love a warm, rich tube sound, and who doesn't, though it can at times, it can be a little bit more at times than you want, but in general, it will help almost any recording essentially come alive. And the reason for that, of course, is that if you go to a good concert hall and you listen to an acoustic concert, you're going to be listening to a lot of second harmonics in that hall. And a second harmonic is just basically the second sound. So imagine your primary sound is coming off the instrument or the voice of the singer. The second harmonic is that the first bounce of that sound off the concert hall wall, off of a reflective panel maybe that they mounted on the wall or in the ceiling.
So it has a slight delay to the original sound, but it helps kind of fill things in and feel warmer and richer.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a huge change. It's actually, if you measure it on an oscilloscope, and we do this often on the show, the second harmonic is something that is a very low percentage of the fundamental, or your primary sound that you're initially listening to. And of course there are third, fourth, fifth harmonics, but the second is almost always the dominant after the fundamental, for the simple reason it's the first reflection. So it's going to be the most loud, the most strong, and it works the same way electrically. So electrically, when you have a harmonic distortion in an electrical circuit, generally speaking, certainly with tubes, generally speaking, the second is the dominant. Though when you go over to solid state, often the third is dominant. And third is discordant to most people's ears, which is why, in many cases, tube circuits sound better to solid state circuits.
Assuming they're adding lots of second harmonic and not third.
Yeah.
Well, enough second harmonic, I should say.
Yeah.
So one last thing with the Rogers here. So the reason why we essentially overlooked it previously is because of the 6SN7 GT labels on them. We never recommend using a GT rated tube in a modern circuit. It's just not good for them. It kills them quickly. They get noisy. They fail. They're not designed for it unless the circuit itself was actually designed to handle them, like our universal 6 or 12 SN7 preamp. And so we essentially put them aside. We didn't want to sell them to people because they were going to get killed. But in reality, there was never a GT version made with angle plates, as far as we know. They transitioned to GTA while the plates were back to back, and then they transitioned into the angle plate design while they were on GTAs. So these are actually just GTAs, in our opinion, relabeled as 6SN7 GTs.
Not only that, but we're fairly certain that Sylvania actually assembled the whole mica plate structure and shipped that off as an assembly.
Yeah.
And so really all Rogers had to do in Toronto was to bring glass from their molding shop and a plastic base that looks like
Sylvania provided as well, yeah. And attach a getter onto it and pull a vacuum.
Yeah. Well, they had to wire it up too. But yeah, I mean, there's still lots to do. But the primary electrical components look like they're actually identical to what was inside one of our very favorite 6SN7s ever made.
And we've been listening to it, and it sounds exactly how a GTA Sylvania should. So we're going to go and listen to a track right now. We're going to have them one after the other, and you guys can be the judge.
I felt you move somewhere beside me. I searched around but couldn't find you. In your wild, wild garden, I will be. In your garden, under the magnolia tree. This night has a magical touch, something to be unsaid, something to last.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that test track. It's one of our favorite. It's a great test track because it's a good sounding piece of music with it's an excellent recording. It's got lots going on there that allow you to sort of pull out different sounds, both in the bass, the mid range, and the treble, as well as a really wonderful vocal rendition. So
yeah, so if you're interested in these tubes, in getting some of that great GTA sound, we have a number of pairs of them in the store now. They are all marked as being used, although likely many of them are actually new old stock, but we just don't know for sure. I mean, this one we believe is probably new old stock. But, you know, we're not going to differentiate. We're going to sell them all at the used price. So if you're interested, pop on in there.
yeah, and there are a limited number of pairs. It was never a common tube, just like the Sylvania GTA was not. It was done in numbers, but not huge numbers like the later GTBs.
Mm-hmm. And we have no way of getting more of these, basically. Rogers tubes don't tend to show up very much. We just got lucky a long time ago with them.
Yeah. Okay, well, what have we got that's going on sale this week, Charles?
Let's clear the deck and we'll be right back.
Well, this week we've got the modern version of the 6SN7 on sale, and that is the 12AU7. In fact, one of our favorite versions of this is the RCA Clear Top, and these are wonderful sounding 12AU7s. Now, as a type, I'm not a big fan of the 12AU7. It is...
It tended to lose a lot of the warmth that the 6SN7s brought to the sound.
Yeah, I think if I'd never heard a 6SN7, a better 6SN7 like the Sylvania and Rogers that we were just looking at, I would be perfectly fine with these. But after you've heard a 6SN7, it's like, you know. But the nice thing about the RCA Clear Tops is that they have an amazing amount of clarity, a touch of mid-range warmth, and I think they have the best treble of any 12AU7 ever made, possibly any tube ever made. It is that amazing. It's just crystal clear. So if you're running an amp that needs a nice 12AU7, these are a safe bet, and they're on sale this week only. And going along with what we have been doing to try to help people out during difficult economic times, you can double dip. So you can take the sale price and you could put a Cheers code on top of it. So you can get 2 discounts on the same order. And talking about Cheers codes, here's some Cheers codes to help you out. There's a secret code that's pretty easy to figure out, and lots of people get it and save a lot of money. We can reach almost everyone around the world with flat rate $20 shipping. And if your order's $150 or more after discount, the shipping's on us, folks. This is Jim.
And Charles.
Signing off. Cheers, everyone.